Good morning, everyone. Good morning. What's up? What's up? Hope you guys are doing well. Today is November the 13th, Thursday today. Overall markets really didn't do too much yesterday, kind of just dropped back in between its range for the week. We ended up having a really nice push here on the YM. The only names that ended up moving yesterday towards the upside was AMD, and that was a super solid trade. That was the reclaim back above your pre-market high. Kind of talk about that a little bit here. But overall, now the markets the past couple of days, a lot more consolidation, specifically on the NQ. The one name that has been leading back towards the upside has been the YM, as I mentioned, and a lot of names within the Dow have pushed up nicely, whereas tech kind of tucked with the tech rotation. So it just makes it a little bit more difficult to look for intraday setups on most of these tech names. So you just have to be a little bit more selective. But what's up, everyone? Good morning. Good morning. Let me pull up the Forex Factory. What's up, Ashley? Andreas, Jess, Jesus, Ryan, Cinna, Jeff. Yeah, late. Sorry, I forgot to post the YouTube. I forgot to unlist it. What's up, A Alex? Sorry, Philly, Ivan, Juan, Brian, Todd. Good morning, everyone. Victor, 50. I am Deuce. What's up, Kenneth, Wayne? Yeah, what's up, everyone? Explain Edge. Edge is essentially just yielding a positive expectancy. So if your strategy has a positive expectancy in the long term, that means you have an edge in the markets. Exactly, basically like an advantage. What's up, everyone? Good morning. Okay. All right, let me pull up the Forex Factory here. There is no red folder news events. So yesterday, we had basically the news event was in the after hours, which was already expected that Trump was going to sign the bill to end the government shutdown. So he did that yesterday night. I think it should be in effect by today, I think at 9:45. But basically, we are going to have that final government shutdown, but we don't have any red folder news events. So most likely, we're not going to get those reports that are released, which are CPI, right? Any unemployment claims. We're supposed to have unemployment this morning along with CPI, but unfortunately, we don't have those numbers that are going to be released. So we don't have that, at least for next week. Right, we'll talk about that a little bit more as the time comes, but FOMC minutes, and we have a few other red folder news events here as well. But at least for this week, no CPI and no other red folder news events. The only red folder news event the only news event in the market was the bill to end the government shutdown. Okay, let's go into the major indices coming into today. So the key levels that we have marked out specifically for the ES, let's actually just talk about the Dow. We normally don't talk about the Dow Jones. Normally it's just primarily the ES along with the NQ. But as you can see here, primarily the Dow has been leading the market back towards the upside. The Dow actually ended up having a really solid push towards our all-time highs. And then yesterday in the morning, another pop right in towards our all-time highs. Whereas you can see the overall rest of the market lagging behind. NQ, middle of the range. ES, closer to the top of the range, but still underneath their previous day highs. And you can clearly see that this is considered relative weakness compared to the YM, which is leading the market back towards the upside. But as you can see, coming to market open here, coming into today here for the ES, the key levels that we have marked out are just going to be your levels from this week, right? We haven't really changed them whatsoever. Still the exact same level applies, which is going to be this 68.50. This is the level that we have from Tuesday, where we have multiple touches, from Monday as well. And then yesterday, you can see we have multiple touches right off this key area, and then nice push into the after hours. So coming to market open, the exact same level applies. It's going to be this 68.50. If we can maintain above your 68.50, we can see this potential push just right back in between yesterday's range. Ultimately, if we break underneath your 68.50 and hold underneath, potentially we can see some more downside here in the overall market. So keep an eye out on your 68.50. That's going to be the key level coming into market open, specifically for the ES. If we look at the SPY chart, you can see fairly similar thing. Not too much to talk about in this case. Key levels that we have marked out. We can actually just refine this to match up with the ES. The key levels we can mark out is just going to be your previous day lows where you have multiple touches from Tuesday and then also from last week here as well. So for the SPY coming into today, key levels we can mark out is going to be this 680.50. And we also have this level marked out here as well, which is your 683. So if you want to see some upside, you just want to see the hold of your previous day lows for a potential pushback towards the upside. Another possible scenario, of course, is going to be the break above your 683.50 for a potential pushback up and towards your 685. So far, right, you can see fairly neutral, actually a lot more neutral on the Qs, which I'll kind of talk about here in a second. SPY, a little bit more bullish. But for the SPY, the key levels, as I mentioned, 680.50. Ultimately, if we break underneath, retest this level, we can see some more downside. So the key level, previous day lows coming into today, 680.50. If you look at the NQ, you can see this one's a lot more neutral and it's actually weaker compared to the rest of the names. So coming into today, let's go into the hourly chart. You can see if we're just comparing the two names side by side, ES in the upper range of this, in the upper third of this range that we've created after this big drop towards the downside. Whereas the NQ, I would consider in equilibrium, right? More closer to the middle of the range. So NQ has been lagging behind the ES along with the Dow as well. So that's why a lot of the tech names, we haven't had any really nice opportunities. AMD was the only one just because that had news plus higher timeframes. And that was really the one that we focused on yesterday. But at least moving forward here for the NQ, key levels that we have marked out, previous all-time highs. We also have your high that we created, which is the area that we broke down from. But really moving forward here for the NQ, you can see we have multiple touches here, right, off your previous all-time highs. If we can maintain above this level, we can see a pushback towards the upside. If we ultimately break underneath your previous all-time highs, which is your 25,500, you can see we have one touch, two touch, three touch. If we break underneath and hold underneath this key level, potentially you can see some more downside here on the overall markets to come back and fill the gap we've created. So we want to be a little bit more cautious on the markets today. As you can see, just based off this week's price action, we actually haven't really done too much for the NQ. We've just been consolidating in this general area. So keep an eye out on your previous day lows here for the NQ. If we look at the QQQ, similar thing. If you go on to the 15-minute time frame, we actually haven't had a clear direction this week specifically for the NQ. Key levels we had marked out was our Monday's highs from yesterday. Ultimately, within the first 5 minutes, really big drop right back in between its previous range. And now you can see we're just consolidating in this general area. So for the Qs coming into today, key levels that we have marked out, we have your previous day lows. We have essentially just equilibrium marked out at 621. And then we have the top of the range, which is your 624. So coming into market open, let's keep an eye out on your previous day lows. If you can maintain your previous day lows, we can just see a mini bounce back towards the upside. If you can get above your 621, potentially you can see a bigger move higher, but we're just kind of stuck in between this range. So don't expect crazy trends specifically on the QQQ until essentially we break outside of this range here. If you want to see some more downside, similar thing, underneath your previous day lows, touch, another touch here, and then a touch on Monday. If we break underneath your previous day lows, potentially you can see a move down in towards your gap fill, which is going to be back down in towards your 613. So keep an eye out on your 618 coming to market open. That's going to be a key level here for both the Qs and the NQ. And then we can also keep an eye out on that level here, specifically for the ES and SPY as well. And also let's take a look at the Dow. So the Dow Jones is the indice that's been leading the market towards the upside. So we end up having a really solid push, not something we normally take a look at, but this is the one with the clear trend. As you can see, nice push higher, broke above, nice clear trends towards the upside. Now for the Dow, with it breaking above its all-time highs yesterday, We just like to see the Dow maintain now above your previous all-time highs. So you can see we have multiple touches here, which is the 48,200. If we can maintain above now your previous all-time highs here, we can see some nice pushes towards the upside, specifically on the YM and the Dow Jones. So keep an eye on this key level. This is really the only indice that is showing a lot of relative strength and is leading the markets back higher. So anything that is within the Dow Jones, you want to keep an eye out on. So some names, something like UNH, there's a couple other names that are within the Dow Jones. So keep an eye out on your previous all-time highs. Besides that, now let's go on to a few tech names. As I mentioned, a lot of these tech names are just consolidating here now with the overall markets, but we'll take a look at some of these ones. If you guys do have any charts or any tickers, you guys can now drop them in the chat. Let me grab some water here before we go into some of these ones. All right. What's up, everyone? Hope you guys are doing well. Yeah, if you guys do have any charts or any tickers, I'll go over some of the Mag 7 names and then I'll go over some other tickers here in a second. If you guys are enjoying this so far, I appreciate if you guys drop a like. If you guys haven't joined the daily watch list, of course, that's in the description below as well. Let's go into Tesla. So Tesla on the daily chart, as you can see, it's just been consolidating. Nothing really to talk about here on Tesla, right? Range high down in towards your range low. It does seem like Tesla now most likely going to gravitate down in towards your range low, closer to your 420 along with your 410. So Tesla, until we finally break outside this consolidation, I would just be a little bit more patient on this name. Key levels that we have marked out, if you look at the hourly chart, as you can see, really not too much is going on. I have a couple levels drawn, but ultimately just in more of a range. Right, pushes higher. You can see no real clear direction here on the hourly, just because the daily is just consolidating here as well. So for Tesla, really just strictly based off of intraday price action. The key levels that I have marked out is your 440. There's been some nice opportunities around this 440 key level. Once we broke underneath it yesterday, immediate retest. Another key level that we have marked out is your Wednesday's lows, your Tuesday's lows, which end up using as a nice retest later into this session. So key levels coming into market open on Tesla is going to be your Mondays and Tuesdays lows, where you can see previous support turn into resistance. We can also mark out our previous day lows here as well, which is now going to be your 426. So key levels coming to today, potential kind of pop and fade off of your 433 for continuation lower. Another possible scenario, break underneath your previous day lows for this continuation down in towards your earnings low, which is going to be that 418. So for Tesla, these are the key levels that have marked out coming into market open. As for a few other tickers potentially, right, the break above your, another scenario, potential break above your 433 for a reversal trade. But as I mentioned, for Tesla, there's not really a clear direction here on the higher time frames. So you're just going to be waiting for the reactions that we have off these key levels. So this is what I have for Tesla. Just going to wait a few seconds. All right, let's go on to the next chart, which is NVIDIA. So NVIDIA coming to market open, key levels that I have marked out today, or at least yesterday, was our 195. So 195 was key here, which was our previous high that we created here on Tuesday. Ultimately, within the first 5 minutes, we just dropped right back towards the downside, and then we gravitated down and towards our previous day lows. So the key levels we can have marked out really is your previous day lows, which also happens to be your Tuesday's lows. So just a lot of consolidation the past 2 days here on NVIDIA. So you can see consolidation, key levels that we have marked out, 191 along with this 195. So we're just going to mark out this general area. If you do want to see some upside, really break now above your 195 for a continuation higher. Another possible scenario, potential bounce off your previous day lows for this pushback towards the upside. In my opinion, the only long scenario here on NVIDIA is going to be the break above your 195. Right, this bounce off your previous day lows could very much fail, and we could just continue lower. So the long, in my opinion, is going to be above your 195, which is essentially your previous day highs, and also your Tuesday's highs here as well. As for Nvidia towards the downside, since this one has been showing a little bit more weakness the past couple of sessions, if it does want to break lower underneath your 191, so your previous day lows, also your Tuesday's lows here as well, if you can show a little bit more weakness, we have a decent amount of room back down in towards our full gap fill that we've created over the weekend. So we created what's called this gap. So we gap up here in the overall markets. You have multiple touches here now. If we reject, if we get underneath your previous day lows, which is this 191, we can see this potential move back down in towards that full gap fill, which is that 188. So keep an eye out on Nvidia coming to market open. As I mentioned, if the Qs does want to potentially fill its gap, Nvidia can be one of these leaders towards the downside. So keep an eye out on your previous day lows for a potential fade underneath your previous day lows towards that full gap fill. So we'll keep an eye out on Nvidia coming into market open, potentially underneath your 191. And I'll show you guys the gap here as well. So this is the gap. You can see we have two levels marked out. If we can break underneath, we can fill this gap towards the downside. If we break above your 195, right, there's actually a gap towards the upside. So you can see we're basically looking for that gap fill on Nvidia to either side. Break underneath your previous day lows, gap towards the downside. Break above your previous day highs, essentially, we can see a potential gap towards the upside. So that's what we have for Nvidia. As I mentioned, no bias, right? We're just going to wait for the overall markets because, right, the Qs is essentially consolidating itself. So whenever the Qs is consolidating itself, right, you don't have a bias on any really name. You just want to wait for the reaction on the overall markets. As for AMD, so AMD was the nice trade that we had towards the upside yesterday. This one was primarily just based off of the news factor that we had. So we had some bullish news here in the after hours that ended up pushing AMD up about 6% in the pre-market. And then AMD was really showing relative strength all day. So this was the key one to essentially trade back towards the upside. And then ultimately it just came back in towards a key level of resistance. And now we're coming right back down. So for AMD coming into today, the key levels that I have marked out is your high that we created here, which is your 248 on Tuesday. We also have a very key level marked out now, which is your earnings high, 254. This is also your pre-market high from yesterday as well. Once we reclaim back above that area, this was our signal for a potential continuation higher off that reclaim. And now you can see prices just consolidating and essentially coming back into this general area. So for AMD, nice bounce later into the session. Now we're about to come back down once again. So for AMD moving forward, key levels that we have marked out, 253. If we can hold your 253, we can see a potential push back up in towards your 260s. So that's going to be the key level to watch out for on AMD today, 253. If we break underneath, we're going to see a little bit more consolidation, potential mean reversion. But for AMD, I'm leaning a little bit more towards the upside. I'm fairly neutral based off this market's open, but leaning a little bit more towards the upside, but not a crazy amount, right? We had them move yesterday, which was nice. We'll see if now it can consolidate and potentially move higher. But key level 253 on AMD. As for Apple, not really too much to talk about on this one. Key levels that we have marked out is your 273 and also your earnings high, which is, I'm pretty sure, your all-time highs here. So for Apple, really not doing too much. You can see if we're marking on Monday's price action to Tuesday, we basically have this general area. So not really a clear direction here on Apple. Nice pop on Monday, pop on Tuesday. Now on Wednesday, we're just kind of consolidating right back in between the middle of the range. So for Apple, yeah, really not too much to talk about. Key level is going to be this 273. If we reject, we're just going to come right back down in between your range that we've created for this week. If we can reclaim, potentially you can see a move higher, but ultimately for Apple now, I would like to see it at a minimum break above your previous day highs and hold above that level if we're going to see longs. I like longs above your 275.50, which is going to be above your previous day highs and also your Tuesday's highs. Besides that, I'll be a little bit more hands off here on Apple. As for Amazon, so a couple of these names I like towards the upside, but ultimately they kind of pushed back towards the downside yesterday with the overall markets. Amazon ultimately kind of rejected off our key pivot point 251, kind of drove back towards the downside. So not too much to talk about here. This one actually ended up having a nice move lower, kind of rejected off for 251, got underneath their previous day lows. Nice push towards the downside. Now your key level support all the way back down and towards that 242. As for Google, similar thing. Key levels that we wanted to see hold was your 292, potential hold of that for this push higher towards your all-time highs. Ultimately, within the first 5 minutes, once again, drop towards the downside. So a lot of these ones really now back inside of the range. As you can see, still holding higher lows, but ultimately not as bullish, right? You can see I would just consider this a little bit more consolidation. If you kind of just draw this out, not really a clear higher time frame trend, just a lot more consolidation here just based off the hourly chart. As for Microsoft and Meta, so these ones are finding a little bit of a bottom here off your 492. Key levels that we have marked out is your previous kind of key pivot point 506 along with this earnings low. So for Microsoft, moving forward, key levels is going to be, as I mentioned, 506 along with this 516. These are the key levels that I have on Microsoft. So if you want to see some upside, you're going to have to see that reclaim back above your 516 for any sort of push higher. Ultimately, if we do reject off this area, we're just going to come right back inside the range. Meta, similar game plan. Key levels that we had yesterday was our 625.50. Was not able to hold this level, and then we end up having a nice push lower. Right? Ultimately, Meta, one of the weaker tickers here, lower highs are being built. Broke underneath the exact level I talked about yesterday, and now you can see all the way back down and towards your 605. So coming into this morning, I actually do like I do like Netflix here. As I mentioned, this one has a split coming up, and now we have this kind of bottom here off your 1090. We have this pretty big gap towards the upside here as well. Netflix is one of the names that are showing some relative strength compared to the overall markets. We ended up reclaiming back above your earnings low yesterday. So now moving forward here on Netflix, you just like to see the hourly chart maintain above your earnings low for a potential pushback towards the upside. But ultimately now let's kind of go on to a few other tech names here now. But overall markets, as I mentioned, I don't see too much here with the Qs kind of consolidating in this general area. But my game plan, as I mentioned, is now just going to be patient and waiting for the Qs, the reaction that we have off your previous day lows. My game plan is if we break underneath, we're going to be looking for some more downside for this full gap fill. If we maintain, then potentially we can be looking for a mean reversion back towards the middle of the range here. My top watch is coming to market open. There's really just going to be NVIDIA in itself for potential downside underneath their previous day lows. And potentially Tesla here as well is showing a little bit more relative weakness. The key levels that we can have marked out previous day lows as well, 428. Besides that, on most of the other tickers, I would just be waiting for any sort of relative strength or weakness coming into market open. All right, now let's go on to a few tech names here. If you guys do have any charts or any tickers, you guys can now drop them in the chat. Yeah, what's up, everyone? Hope you guys are doing well. If you guys do have any charts or any tickers, you guys can now drop them in the chat. If you guys are enjoying this so far, I appreciate if you guys drop a like. If you guys haven't joined the free watch list, that of course is in the description below here as well. Let's see, I haven't read the chat. Yes, 84% reclaim. Is a single candle displacing above a key level, or should we wait for another displacing? It's basically a reclaim setup. So you can wait for the break above, either via candle close, or you can get in as the candle is forming. That can cause a bunch of fake outs. So primarily it's going to be the candle close back above. So something like AMD yesterday, I actually got in a little bit of a later entry than I would have liked to. But the reclaim was your pre-market high. So there's a couple of different levels. You have your pre-market high here, which would have been the best reclaim, or you essentially have this 1 minute opening range here as well. So for AMD, the best would have been this right here. Reclaimed, you can see, tried retesting it earlier, failed. Once it broke back above, reclaimed nice towards the upside. I got in a little bit of a later entry, which was the reclaim, essentially back above your 1 minute opening range for this nice continuation higher. Okay, scroll down here. As for Palantir, so Palantir kind of been a name that's beaten down ever since we had earnings. Key level for Palantir that we had marked out yesterday was really this 190. So key level 190 here. Palantir ended up showing a little bit more relative weakness. And we also had this gap fill towards the downside here as well. So for Palantir, the key levels that we have marked out, 190. Once we broke underneath 190, nice push down towards your previous day lows. And then we end up having a nice retest off your previous day lows for this continuation lower. So for Palantir coming to market open today, key levels that we can actually have marked out. I like this level a little bit better, to be honest. It's going to be your low that we created here on Monday. So low that we created here on Monday, we can just get rid of this one. And then we also have your full gap fill. So for Palantir coming to market open, we can just mark this out. What we have today here is your Monday's lows, your 184. We also have your previous day lows marked out. If Palantir can stay heavy, which is really underneath this 184, we can be looking for continuation down in towards our full gap fill that we created over the weekend. Another possible scenario underneath your previous day lows, push down in towards your 178. So Palantir, let's keep an eye out on this one coming to market open, for a potential push down in towards that full gap fill that essentially we created here over the weekend. So we'll keep an eye on Palantir coming into today. As I mentioned, key levels 184 along with our previous day lows. As for a few other tickers, let's see. SoFi. Let me make sure I'm grabbing some water. As for SoFi, yeah, this one's at all-time highs. So we talked about SoFi, really nice bounce off our earnings highs, higher time frame key level here as well. A lot of buyers stepping in. Now this one's back at our all-time highs. Also, the other levels I marked out yesterday was our 30-50. If you can get above this, continuation higher. Nice break and retest off our previous day highs. Now we're back at our all-time highs. So levels moving forward that we can have marked out is going to be this all-time highs key pivot level. And now other levels that we have marked out is really your, let me just readjust this. Previous day lows, we have your high that we created here on Tuesday. So really for SoFi moving forward, after going from range low to range high, this is a very key level. I do expect a little bit of sellers to step in, but ultimately now what we like to see kind of form here on SoFi is the hold above your 31. If we can maintain above your 31, we can see this next leg higher, right? If we're looking at the daily chart, this one, similar thing, fairly bullish here as well. You can expect a little bit of sellers to step in off our all-time highs, but ultimately now, if we can maintain above really this 31 or even 29, we like to see eventually the close above your all-time highs and continuation towards the upside. So that's what we have for SoFi. Preferably we have some consolidation. After this big push higher, consolidate, higher lows be built, and then we end up having this next leg higher. All right, let's go into a few other tickers here. IWM. So for IWM here, just a lot more consolidation, similar thing to the rest of the indices. As you can see, we've really just been consolidating for the better part of the past couple of weeks. or even a couple months. So for IWM, after hitting our all-time highs, our main objective, you can see just a lot more consolidation. If something looks like this on the daily chart or even the hourly chart, just know it's just set up for more consolidation. So there's really nothing to talk about here on the IWM. And whenever the markets are ranging like this, it just makes it a little bit more difficult trading conditions intraday because the overall indice itself isn't really moving. So really not too much to talk about here on IWM, at least if you're looking at key levels intraday. All I have marked out is essentially your Mondays and Tuesdays lows. If we can break underneath, continuation lower. If we hold this general area, potentially you can see this bounce back towards the upside. Intel, another name, really nice push higher, consolidating now, which is good. Ultimately, it's just setting up for that next leg higher. What I like to see here for Intel is eventually this invalidation of this head and shoulders. So the key level we have marked out is going to be this 39 key psych, where higher lows are still being built. What I like to see, break back above, this is going to ignite the move back towards the upside. So right now, Intel is consolidating, but eventually, if we can get that reclaim, it's going to be back above your 39. This is really the only level that matters. If you can get that reclaim back above your 39, this is going to push this back towards the upside. Okay. Let me go on to a couple more tickers, and then I will most likely get ready for market open here. How do you know when to enter? A candle has not closed yet. What makes you confident in being a fake out? So a lot of times when you're trading towards the downside, you have to be a little bit more aggressive. So the downside, sometimes I might get in before the candle closes, just because if it taps a key level, the downside usually rejects, immediate rejection, and then just continues lower. Whereas the upside, primarily I'll wait for the candles to close. That one's really more based, it's more discretionary and based off reading the tape, but you can be a little bit more aggressive if you're trading towards the downside. As for snow, this one's actually forming a nice base here in the past, 30 to 90 days. We end up having a nice kind of uptrend here in the overall markets. Nice previous levels of resistance, now turning to support, and this one is now continuing back higher. So snow actually looks really good. Key levels now you're just going to have marked out. Previous resistance turned to support levels. The next levels we can have marked out is going to be your 276. What we like to see, higher lows be built, and then the break above your 276 for continuation. All right, let me grab some water here. I'll go over my game plan once more, and then I'm going to call it a day here. If I join the WAP today, is a month. Yeah, it'll be from a month from now. So if it's the 13th, then it'll be the 13th of the next month. Okay, for SPY, really coming to today, as I mentioned, the game plan here for the overall markets is keeping an eye out on your previous day lows. We have 3 touches here. An overall market somewhat staying heavy. As I mentioned, if we break underneath and hold, we can see a potential continued push down and towards your gap fill. All right, so keep an eye on this today here for the Qs. If we bounce, I'll be cautious. I'm not that interested in this bounce since we've already bounced here multiple times and we haven't had a significant bounce back towards the upside. So the bounce play for me really is kind of off the table. I'd much rather wait for kind of the break above your 621. So I'd much rather, if the Qs comes down into market open, I'm going to be a little bit more cautious. Since we've already had this touch multiple times, if we bounce here and ultimately break underneath, we can be looking for some more downside here on the overall markets. For SPY, similar thing, but not really. The Qs is much better for a short position than the SPY. But for the SPY key level previous day lows, if we can bounce, similar thing, potential mean reversion back towards the upside. Ultimately, if we get underneath, that will mean that the Qs is a lot weaker, and then we can look to short the Qs as well. So key level 681 here on the SPY. For the Qs, 618. For my main watches coming to market open, Tesla, let's keep an eye on this one. Previous day lows, along with this 432. Potential previous day low retest for continuation down in towards your 422 and below. And then NVIDIA, touch here, break underneath. Potential continuation down in towards this 188. So there's actually a decent amount of setups coming into today. More kind of setups actually towards the downside. But as I mentioned during this market, we're open to playing both sides. So Tesla and NVIDIA look decent if you can get underneath their previous day lows and hold. Besides that, I don't really see too many long setups in the markets. So I'm just going to hold off on the long side and be a little bit more patient, at least for the short side today. Potential Tesla and NVIDIA underneath their previous day lows. So we'll keep an eye on that. But yeah, that is going to be it for me today. No red folder news events this week. We should have some more next week with the end of government shutdown here as well. But yeah, that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you guys did enjoy that. If you did, appreciate if you guys drop a like and sub. Of course, if you guys haven't joined the watch list, that one's in the description below. And then I'll see you guys all tomorrow. All right. Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of the day. Peace.